Hey guys, it's Justin, Doug, All Elite Feed. We are back in our different brand, I guess you would say, but what we're basically going to be doing here is covering mainly AEW, covering Dynamite each and every Wednesday. There are four quarterly pay-per-views that they have a year, but not just that. It could be anything big in pro wrestling, MMA, UFC, what have you. Stuff that we've covered in the past. This is just that kind of direction that we want to go now. And talking about now, tonight, Dynamite. Next week, Doug, Lance Archer making his in-ring debut for AEW.
Yeah, we basically been expecting Lance Archer for a while. He's finally been debuting with Jake Roberts. I think AEW is doing a really good job of bringing in that manager role again with veterans like Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Jake Roberts. Jake is one of those legendary performers. Everyone knows how good he is on the mic, and to be able to see him get another shot because he never was able to really get that other shot with working with other companies due to his drug addiction, alcohol addiction, all that stuff. So he's been clean and sober, and now he gets another chance, and he shows this generation just how good he really is. He's really helping Lance Archer. I think him and Cody make sense. I think that was definitely the play for Double or Nothing. I think right now, too, you've got to look at it as in they were scheduled to have blood and guts. They basically had to just scratch that. And then they're scheduled to go into Double or Nothing. And my opinion is that I feel like that they're basically just going to go ahead and go with the storylines that they have. And if Double or Nothing comes, then they'll do it at Double or Nothing. If not, we might just have a couple of big dynamites, and that'll be it.
Yeah, I agree. And having Jake as the mouthpiece, like it's a very simple concept. You got someone who may not be the best on the mic, not saying that Lance Archer isn't, but with Jake, you're not going to go wrong. With your Paul Heyman, you're not going to go wrong, or what have you. So, but it's great to keep building him up like this. Let him be the big muscle man and show what he's got, like he did in that kind of special vignette last week where they had, like, I don't want to say a backyard, but out in the woods, whatever you want to label that as. It was different, but it seemed like everybody liked it for the most part at the end of the day, and that they kind of played off of that. It looked like they were still out there, and Jake's out there by a fire pit or what have you. But they're going to have that kind of vibe that goes along with the gimmick.
Did you hear that the backyard was actually Darby's backyard? That film was in actually Darby's
really?
backyard.
Wow.
Yeah. Darby's a weird dude.
Well, speaking of which, that's actually what I want to dive into now. A lot of people are comparing him mainly AEW about Sting. You've heard Jeff Hardy. Do you compare Darby to either one of those guys or somebody else, or what's your take on it?
I think Darby's definitely Jeff Hardy-like. There's a lot of similarities. I think Darby's definitely an enigma. Jeff Hardy's an enigma. Darby is creative with film, and Jeff was creative with music. Darby is into skateboarding. Jeff was into motocross. Like, it's just like dirt bike riding and all that. It's just I think Jeff definitely has more of a size, but what got Jeff over, I feel like, is what's getting Darby over. I feel like a lot of people look at Darby and think of Jeff Hardy. And, even like someone like Chris Jericho has said that Darby is Jeff, like, flat out. So I think that, in my opinion, I would love to see Jeff when he becomes a free agent, whether he had like this long contract signing thing, just do like a 2 or 3 month feud with Darby and pass the torch and put Darby over. And I think that could really take Darby to another level too. So I'm hoping that we do see that later on down the road whenever he is free to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know, like, he had his match tonight with Kip Sabian. And one thing that I talked to you about previously was that's actually a great point. If they were able to, fantasy book is what we're doing now, but if they were actually able to bring in a Jeff Hardy, but say that they weren't, Darby's still feuding with the inner circle. He's doing the whole vignettes before where he's wearing their faces and burns them all in a big trash pile or whatever, what have you. He needs a feud. Like, it's great to see him, and that they're building him up to be a big star down the road, and they're starting that now even. But who does Who would he
I
who would he
think
feud with?
that you could do that they haven't done is Darby and MJF. I think that, you don't necessarily want to burn one to build up the other, but sometimes when two guys are kind of at that peak, when they're both over on each side, they make each other.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a really interesting feud. I'm not saying they're Rock and Triple H, but that's kind of like what I'm talking about when it comes to like the same type of category of two young guys getting each other over. Like when Triple H and The Rock were kind of stuck in the middle part, but about to break through by feuding with each other, they got themselves both over. And I feel like that MJF and Darby could do that.
No, that's a great point because I think you would think MJF was actually he was teasing moving right to the title scene right after his feud with Cody, but maybe not. They don't have to go right to that just because he has a winner for Cody. They could, just like you said, use somebody else that's upcoming as well, and where they can kind of feed off of each other, but don't hurt each other at the same time as well, where they can be elevated at the same time with the feud with each other. So.
Well, and that's the great thing about just having AEW around, right? It gives you an opportunity to possibly have something done right. Like, because you're so used to things being done wrong for so long that, like, it's just such a breath of fresh air where, like, oh, wow, they're creating their own stars. Oh, wow, guys are getting over. Like, a guy we didn't see tonight, but organically has just gotten himself over is Adam Hangman Page. I mean, when you're talking about a guy that when he was going into his match with Chris Jericho for the title, nobody was feeling Adam Page. They liked him because he was part of the Elite, but that was it. And to where he is now, I mean, it's unbelievable. And so, and AEW gives him that platform to get himself over. And I think one of the frustrating things that from people that have always watched WWE is when guys get momentum, it just gets halted for whatever reason. We don't know. We all think it's because the old man just doesn't have it anymore. But it gets halted, and then they take 10 steps back. And then too much damage is done, and they lose their opportunity. With AEW, everything is so fresh, so new. And you have faith with who's running it that these guys are going to get a real shot.
Yeah, no, that's great because I was right there as well when they had All Out for the title match. It was like, you see what's happening here. They're going to try to give Page the shine.
Yep.
And a lot of people thought he was going to win the title, and you're glad that he didn't do the slow burn. It's going to be a huge deal. Eventually, he's going to get there. But when he does, it's going to be so much bigger than what it would have meant 6 months ago.
Right. And it's worked. And, like, for them the reason that tag match works so well, which some people call it the greatest tag team match they've ever seen, it's definitely up there. But what made it work so well wasn't just how great the match was, but the story that was involved in the match. And when you put both of those together, you have magic. And usually, when it comes to AEW, they build things for a long time. So when it gets to pay-per-view, this is a huge payoff. And it is a big deal. And they go out there and they deliver. And we're just not used to that on a consistent basis from the other company.
Well, moving on, I actually want to talk about, so Jon Moxley, AEW champion, showed up and attacked Jake Hager. It was like they're starting their feud. I don't know if it's going to be for the title, if it's going to be a double or nothing, or if it might be one of the bigger Dynamites down the road, or what they're doing. But obviously, this is the direction that they're going. That they still have to pay off the Blood and Guts match with Inner Circle and the Elite, which obviously Moxley's not a part of, Darby Allin's not a part of, but they're still, like I keep going back to, you have other people outside of the Elite still feuding with the Inner Circle and how they're kind of playing off of that and where that's really going to lead.
And that's another thing, too, that I like about AEW. They're like, oh, boy, here he goes, AEW. But this company, I love it. I love not everything about AEW, but I really love a lot of it. And I'm so thankful that it's around. Is that there is seeds that have been planted, but they don't have to just immediately do something, right? if they wanted to bring back Moxley and Jericho wrestling, they could do that 6 months down the road because they still have unfinished business. If Cody and MJF end up bumping into each other again, they can do that again because there's still unfinished business. So Cody can go out there and have this long feud with Lance Archer, but him and MJF still have unfinished business. So it just leaves a lot of opportunity there for more feuds, storylines, and there's always something where things have already been planted. So when you go back to it, it's like, man, this thing's actually been built for a while, and I just totally forgot. I had no idea. It could just be a promo segment backstage that set something up 3 months ago that you didn't even think of, and then bam, there it is. So that's really good thing that they do as well.
Well, it's like what we're so used to with especially WWE is it's the machine, right? So you have your big feud, and then you have rematch, gimmick rematch, new gimmick rematch,
Yep.
and this
100%.
this is totally different. You can just have the big match, but revisit it way down the road again.
And not only that, the stakes are so much different, right? There's like 16 titles in the WWE. So even if it's for a belt, who cares? And they're just used as props. There's only very few belts in AEW, and all of them mean something. And usually a win continues you on to keep going to get one of those. So there's things there that work as well. So yeah, it's just it's really refreshing for the wrestling fan. And I can't say enough good things about it right now.
And speaking of which, we actually have Brody Lee, who actually has made his in-ring debut after debuting on TV with AEW last week with the Dark Order. But my thing is with him, I think he's the right guy for the spot. But the guys that he's surrounded with, they've got to really have that spotlight as well, not just him. We sit there, we watch I call it the table for three takeoff from like stuff you would see on the network. And then the little jabs at Vince. And that may continue for a while. And even playing off of that, where he has the setup for Sister Abigail playing off the Wyatt family into his own finisher with that big lariat.
Right.
If he's going to continue with that, or it's just kind of like a wink for right now, like, hey, I'm here. You kind of know where I came from. That this is who I really am. But it's going to be interesting to see where exactly it's going to be led to versus the whole blow-off. I don't know if it's going to be a blow-off last week with SCU or that's going to be a long-term feud that they're going to actually keep going with.
Right. Yeah, like you kind of made it feel like it was going to be Brody Lee and Christopher Daniels at Double or Nothing. It's kind of what it felt like it would be, but that didn't happen. So not really sure where they're going with it. Me personally, I've never even heard Brody Lee talk. So just to hear his promos, I really loved the character of him eating his steak before anyone else and then getting upset when somebody ate before them, getting upset at somebody for sneezing at the table. Table three, a lot of jabs at the WWE, a lot of, and it's funny too, because people are like, well, if they keep going with this whole like anti-Vince thing, it's not going to work. Why wouldn't it work? The AEW fan base was built off of dislike for Vince McMahon. So they absolutely will feed into it. Now, I don't know what the total end game is, but this is a completely different Brody Lee than what we saw in the Wyatt family, and it makes me intrigued. I also thought he looked pretty good in the ring, too. He's definitely an impressive big man. So, it's just unfortunate right now. No crowds, hard to tell how people are reacting to him and what his potential truly is. We just don't know.
Yeah, that was the shame about it was last week was originally supposed to be in Rochester, New York, in his hometown. You could imagine what kind of pop that he actually would have got.
Right.
So if they were actually there. But like you said, with the dead crowds, who knows how long this is really going to drag out for the next month, 2 months, 3 months. But
what's crazy is like Rochester is one of the worst places for the coronavirus right now. Like they're talking about like 56% is in New York are the ones that have been tested positive, and Rochester's a really bad spot. So the fact that that's where they were going, I feel like they really dodged a bullet when it came to having these shows that they were going to have, these past couple
Yeah.
weeks.
And you could tell too, playing, with last week they had the wrestlers in the crowd. Well, they changed that this week. They're not having so many people in a certain area doing the backstage reactions. If they're going to stay with that, or are they going to keep changing it up, or what they're going to do going forward?
I didn't like it. I liked it when they were out there, but I know that there's like a limit of 10 people and all that jazz. So I don't know what they're going to do. This is a tough situation for everyone.
Let me ask you: people have kind of had this left field take? Not many of them, but would you pipe in crowd noise just for the hell of it? I know that sounds so corny, though.
It's going to really play tricks with your mind, because you're seeing nobody, but you're hearing pops.
Right.
So I just don't think you can do that. I really don't. Me personally, I think there should be maybe max 2 matches. Max. I don't think that you need a bunch of matches. It's just a bad idea. And the only way to me it really works is if it's like a true athletic contest and it goes for a pretty long time. If it's just some quick generic match, it looks awful.
Yeah, because that's another thing that they're doing different. WWE, you watch a Raw or SmackDown, or at least you read about it. They're doing 1 or 2 live matches, but then re-air, because they have a huge library, obviously, from several decades.
Right.
AEW doesn't have that advantage. Granted, why not throw on your Adam Page, Kenny Omega, Young Bucks tag match? Because
I agree.
Maybe 100,000 people saw that, versus a crowd of 1 million people that are going to watch it.
I agree. No, I definitely think they should do something like that. They've been around for almost a year. They've got some greatest hits. They can even replay some of the Double or Nothing matches, Cody and Dustin and whatever else. Like I said, there doesn't need to be a lot of new wrestling matches. It just does not work. And I think that they had a big confidence boost after last week. The debut of Matt Hardy, the debut of Brody Lee. People were buzzing, talking about how much better it was in the WWE's presentation and all that stuff. But I think today was a reality check that these empty arena shows, they're really hard to pull off, especially in AEW. I mean, like whenever I talk about going to an AEW show, one of the first things that I'll bring up is the crowd energy. It feels almost like the Attitude Era. Like it is such you just want that adrenaline pump in your veins, like because the crowd is so into everything, because they're so invested into the product. So when you go to an AEW show live, everybody is hyped and the energy's off the charts. Just to have that gone, it is really hard to still look at the product the same.
Well, maybe they will do that. I mean, it's not like that they have to stick to this format. At least try it out.
No.
Air 1 match next week just to see what people think, and I don't see why they would crap on it. Because you can only...
people were watching WrestleMania 30 this weekend and talking about it and tweeting about it and all that stuff. I mean, I think it could be done. It's not ideal, but nothing is ideal right now. This is all tough times for everybody.
It's funny because you actually want to think like what ESPN did, airing, or what they're still doing actually with WrestleManias on the weekend building up to the WrestleMania 36. You would have to think with TNT, with them playing the NBA and that NBA being dead right now, why not air a Revolution or All In or All Out or Double or Nothing? What do you have to lose?
Right. No, I agree. It's not the worst idea. And the way that they build BTE, the way that they have Road 2 shows and all that, people forget, I mean, they built Double or Nothing without any TV. No TV. They just did it off of YouTube videos. So I don't think it's crazy to think that you could do the same thing. The only issue is I'm sure TNT wants content, and they're getting ratings right now because everybody's at home. So it's just one of those things I feel like it's just going to constantly evolve. Just like this whole situation, it evolves daily.
Yeah. What ended the show tonight? Chris Jericho, Matt Hardy. They had the in-ring meeting, and they had Vanguard 1 still in the show. going from the West Coast to the East Coast in a matter of maybe 30 minutes.
Turned down the Inner Circle offer.
Yeah. So what is your take? Because obviously they're letting Matt be Matt with this character with Broken Matt, something that really started maybe what was it, almost 4 years ago at this point. Is it?
And that's where I'm kind of torn, because I'm kind of feeling like the iron is not hot anymore. We're going for it, and I just don't know, especially without live crowds. Because if you can get the live crowd to chant delete, 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 and sing his songs and chant, hole of the ass and all that stuff, yeah, it might work. But man, when you've got a guy that's just talking about Damascus and his vessel and all that other stuff and no crowd, it looks a little rough. I'm not going to lie. It looks a little rough.
Yeah.
Now, I do think Jericho is great. He sells it like Matt is the real deal. And so it does. And I liked how he basically is approaching Matt like, look, you're Matt Hardy. Okay, you can say whatever you want. You're Matt Hardy. You're that same Matt Hardy I've always known. I like that Jericho is taking that approach instead of treating that this guy's been around for 3,000 years and he knew Judas and all that other stuff. So it's creative. I think Matt's forte, honestly, is in video packages and things like that, where you really give him a platform. I thought him teleporting was kind of funny and cool, and him controlling the pyro. It worked because it was an empty arena. If it wasn't an empty arena, it would not have worked. But you might as well be creative and take advantage of certain things like that. So I do appreciate that. But I am a little nervous. I don't know how well this is going to work.
It is a thin line because you're comparing. First thing that I think of is The Undertaker. And all the goofy shenanigans they've done with his character over the years, where you can look past a lot of stuff because you put anybody else playing his character in his role, that they're not going to be able to pull it off. He's one of a kind, and you could say in his own respect, Matt Hardy as well. It's not like you can put Jeff, just for an example, with that character. He kind of played it with Brother Nero, but it was after Matt, you could tell, really pushed him into it.
And I feel like that the broken Matt really got over in the indies almost the same way that Orange Cassidy got over in the indies. Like, people are able to take away all realistic possibilities and just get kind of lost in the character. But now, granted, Orange Cassidy's gotten extremely over in AEW, and I get that, but this thing did not start in AEW. It did not hit its peak in AEW. It started in TNA. This is where it started, and I think it peaked in TNA. And then the problem is we have seen woken Matt in the WWE, and we have seen it been destroyed to nothing. And so now all of a sudden it's back, and we're supposed to believe that it's just this huge thing, and we have no crowd. It's a tough sell. I'm keeping an open mind, but I'm not buying a Matt Hardy t-shirt right now.
That was pretty much it for Dynamite. Did you see anything that they've advertised next week for any matches?
Oh, one thing we forgot to talk about is Sammy Guevara, Kenny Omega. I thought that was really good. I thought that match was really good. And it made me kind of feel like, okay, empty arena matches can work, but it has to be with the right guys. It has to be with guys that can really take it to that next level in the ring. And Kenny and Sammy are both those guys. And Sammy's another one of those guys that really has elevated his game, because he makes sure that he does something memorable every single week. Whether you like it or you don't, whether it was over the top, whether it was cheesy, whatever, he makes sure that he does something that makes people like, oh, he was the guy that did that, or oh, he did that. That's that guy that did that. And it's smart. It keeps his name out there. And so this week he made out with Brandy's picture.
Yeah.
And the last week he sang Judas with MJF. and whatever else. Like he took some crazy bump. He did a 630 with his hat on. And his hat flew while he did it. Like there's just always something that Sammy does that sticks out.
Well, he has his own YouTube channel. He knows, much less his channel aside, he knows moments just you've got to stand out, you've got to go viral, or whatever the case may be.
Panda fam. Yep. He's and I've met Sammy twice. He's a super nice guy. So yeah, Sammy's the man, and he's definitely one of those young up and comers. To me, the four, I would say, that really young wise that have a future is Darby, Sammy, MJF, and Jungle Boy. I think those four have really earned their spot in AEW.
Yeah, no, I agree. Did you see anything advertised for next week for any matches? See,
No.
I didn't. I just made sure I wasn't missing anything. So I'm curious what. I don't know what they're going to do. Will there be a show next week? I guess is a sub question of that as well.
Well, they did talk about Lance Archer debuting next week, so there is that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That's really it. So, probably no idea.
Yeah.
Like I said, you got to imagine they're just scraping their creative plans and having to just basically fill in until this thing is done, and who knows when that will be.
Yeah. I know one thing you and I talked about. We wanted to actually do a quick little deep dive on Dark Side of the Ring with Chris Benoit. 2-part special that aired last night. Part 1 got dropped early, I think last Friday, that I checked out. I think you did as well. But the full 2-hour special last night. I watched the first season. It was great. From the Montreal screw job and then it's going to be various different stories too. You're going to have the Brawl for All, which I can't wait to watch that one. Like next week it's New Jack.
Yeah, and man, I feel like I'm going to really hate New Jack after this thing. But I think what really will trigger you when you watch these is if you were around this time, if you remember this time, it brings back all the memories and the feelings and like whatever, because I watched like What Happened to Gino Hernandez. I had no idea who Gino Hernandez was, but I watched it and it's a fascinating story, but like I have no emotional attachment to Gino Hernandez. But like when you're going to talk about Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, like, man, you're like opening up the vault of emotions when it comes to, for me as a wrestling fan. Yeah. So, what are your overall thoughts? What do you, when I say Chris Benoit, what do you think?
I mean, you go right back to the tragedy, because that was the exposure of the business and everything. Some people, like Chris Jericho said last night on the show, it almost brought the business down. It could have at least. So when and like you said with Eddie Guerrero, and they really tied in Eddie a lot with the story, as they should have, as the thing really played out. But, I don't know, 20 years ago, I think, a couple guys that's like, I want these guys to be world champions. We're teenagers. We get caught up in it, and we have our quote-unquote guys. That was Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Booker T, and Rob Van Dam. And they all went on to become champion. And right around the same time was Eddie and Chris, is when they won the world titles within like a month of each other. And when they both won it, they had the big moment in the middle of the ring, MSG, WrestleMania 20. That's the moment right there.
Yeah.
And then you see, what was it, a year and a half later, Eddie passes away. A year and a half after that is the tragedy with Benoit. You kind of just see where, not putting it all on one thing, but you can kind of see where Benoit's head was at that last 18 months after Eddie passed, and just how it did not help the situation where he was mentally, obviously. I don't want to say he just went nuts, but it was truly a catalyst to further drive where he was going mentally.
Yeah. No, I mean, so, man, it's like, where do I even start? So I remember when, I guess I could talk about when Chris Benoit died first, because first of all, when Chris Benoit died, we were already still broken from Eddie, right? Like, that one hit hard, like, like nobody, because you never seen somebody that type of level to pass away. Owen was more of just like a tragic death that was just an unfortunate accident. And he was found dead in a hotel. I logged in on I woke up in the morning, I logged in on my computer, I saw that Eddie Guerrero had died. I went to a wrestling website, breaking news, Eddie Guerrero found dead. And I was numb. So Bill was working, and I was off. It was like a Saturday, I think, something like that. I was off, and I remember that there was like an Eddie Guerrero action figure that I wanted at Walmart, but I just hadn't pulled the trigger. As soon as I found out Eddie died, I went right to Walmart and I bought it. And I was like, no. So then I went to go visit Bill at his job, and I told him that Eddie died, and he couldn't believe it. And I was just like, I was just broken. I couldn't believe he died. And then I remember the Raw tribute show. And I remember Benoit was one that was just like, oh boy, he's really in bad shape. You know what I mean? Like you could see it because he never had shown that type of emotion. And I just remember watching that thinking, man, he's in really bad shape. And then I was married, and they had announced that Chris Benoit died, his wife died, and his son died. And I just thought, like, this, whoever killed him, like, what a piece of trash. Like, unbelievable. Like, I can't believe this happened. And I remember, like, watching the Raw tribute show. And granted, I was sad. But I remember, like, slowly, like, looking at the internet and finding out more and more. And then they confirmed that he's the suspect. And I remember when it was basically confirmed, I went into a room and I just cried. And my wife came and checked on me, and I just told her I'm so upset because it's like nobody's ever going to remember him for anything good now. Like, he's just going to be this cold-hearted, blooded murderer, and nobody will understand how good he was or anything. And I remember talking to strangers about it, and like, I really could tell the difference of who understood wrestling and who didn't. When I would talk to them, and I was like, yeah, well, Benoit was one of the best in the world. And they're like, best at what? It's fake. Like, how good do you have to be at throwing fake punches? And it was just like, oh, God, you just don't understand, you know? And I feel like the Chris Benoit story, only true wrestling fans understand how much it hurts. Because it is so confusing. And it is so puzzling why he did what he did. But you also have a love for him that, like, he was a child, like, he was like one of your heroes. He was one of those guys that just had the ultimate work ethic. One of the best wrestlers in the world. Him and Angle set the bar. And, like, it's hard to accept what he did. And we don't know why he did it. And there could be CTE, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's steroids, you name it, everything's involved. Heartbroken from Eddie dying is just a terrible thing that happened. And I also think it's really a consequence of what the business used to be. The business was a wild, wild west. I mean, Bruiser Brody was killed in a locker room. And never, the guy that killed him never was charged. Owen Hart died tragically from a fall. Drugs, alcohol, these people partied like rock stars. They all died at a young age. And I feel like Chris Benoit, the guy that you felt like would never be the ultimate decision maker, the ultimate guy to end all of this type of era of wrestling, Chris Benoit is the one that did it. And it's like the ultimate consequence of almost so many wrestlers' transgressions. And Chris Benoit's the one that ended up really ending that lifestyle. Guys go and play video games now. Guys don't go party. Guys go in and they're friends with everybody in the locker room, and they work on their matches together, and they're all close, and it's a totally different environment than what it used to be. And so it's just something that I don't think that I'll ever get over, like just full closure. But I thought that Dark Side of the Ring really did a good job of presenting everything out there. And it did give me some closure. It was therapeutic to see his son and to see, Nancy's sister and to see them reunite, and just it almost got some type of positivity that you've only known as just tragedy. So they did a really great job.
Yeah. It's like I was saying too, like I had my group of guys who I wanted to be world champion one day that you can tell they struggled coming up with your Guerreros, your Benoits, Van Dams, and Bookers, people like that. And it, even with more specifically Guerrero and Benoit, because I remember watching them when they came into WCW in the mid-90s, and then watching them on that 10-year, give or take, journey to win the world title in WWE. And to see that, that's I tuck them away. It's like, hey, that's one of my guys. You always pull for them, and they finally have their big moment. So that's where the whole emotional investment comes into play. And then you see, like, everything you just spelled out with what happened. And it's like, well, how do you feel now? And you have to divide this up between professional and personal as a career, and then as a person in real life as well. And how do you categorize that? How do you interpret? How do you divide that up? Because besides the whole argument about the Hall of Fame in WWE is, what that is.
Yeah, it's artificial. It's commercial. It's not. Doesn't necessarily represent you really made it. And I totally get they can't put him in the Hall of Fame. I get it. Like, it's just, you can't do it. And I understand. And like I said, I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings on a lot of it. I will say this though, and I feel almost really guilty because I was in Vegas for Double or Nothing, and I was in Caesar's Palace, and I went downstairs. They had StarCast and all that stuff way upstairs. And I went downstairs and I got a burger, and I was with Bill, and was sitting there, and I saw David Benoit right across from me. And I told Bill, I was like, that's Benoit's son. You can tell it clear as day. Like, you look at him and And I just looked at him like, not like a freak show or anything, but just like, man, this kid's been through so much. Like, oh my God, and the life that he's had to live is so brutal. And I've listened to interviews from him afterwards, and I really wish I would have just went up to him and just, said that he was welcome in the wrestling world, that he's not shamed or anything like that. His dad meant a lot to me, regardless of what he did, and I do regret that, because I feel like that he still should have some type of sense of pride for who his dad was, not the murderer, but the wrestler. Like, you can't take that away, and he still does. Like, if you listen to him, his dad is still his hero, and he just looks at it like that wasn't his dad that did that. The brain was shot. So I don't know. A lot of mixed emotions on the Benoit thing. And I will say this, and one more thing too, is just, I love how Dark Side of the Ring got Vicky and Dean Malenko and Jericho and Chavo, like Benoit's kid and Nancy's sister-in-law. Like, these are people that were really into the inner circle. JR are really into the circle of all of this that happened. And if they tried to do this after Benoit died, all those people were untouchable. They were all locked in by the WWE, and they would have never got anything out of them. So it was the right time to do something like this.
That's why that show works. They bring in the right people to tell that story, not just one person in the industry that comes in and tells them.
Martha Hart is going to be spitting fire.
Yeah.
You better get ready, buddy.
And that's supposed to be the finale here in I guess the next month or so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was listening to Talk is Jericho, and he said that Martha went down to Kemper Arena, which I've been in, by the way, because I lived in Kansas. She went down to Kemper Arena with her son, Oj or whatever, and they went up to that scaffold. Like, they climbed up the scaffold and they stood on top of it to see the level of fall and what was basically asked of him to do. And so they knew exactly what Owen went through. And I was like, wow, okay. So that's going to be an interesting one. But that woman hates Vince and is just furious about the whole situation. So that one's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think WWE as a company in general is not going to be a big fan of this show if they aren't already. You can tell last night from that wellness policy how they trashed that last night.
Oh boy, did they ever!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there's, the crazy thing is, and like you hear the way that like the guys talk about like cocaine and weed and somas and Xanax, and it was such a normal lifestyle for them, all of them. It's just crazy to me how much the business has changed. But thankful for that too. I mean, the Young Bucks are good Christian boys and don't even drink or do anything. You know what I mean? Like it's a different ball game now, and it's good though because these guys are going to live a lot longer. And I really truly feel like the athlete is kind of taking over the performer, and you can only perform for so long in the ring as an athlete. And so I feel like guys are going to be retiring at 40 and 42, and they're not going to be in there at 48, 50, 51, 56. Like, I feel like the wrestling has taken itself to another level athletically, and you can only do this for so long. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So.
Well, it's a good chat about that. Is there anything other pro wrestling MMA news you want to touch base on?
I mean, this is honestly like it's a perfect time to start a podcast because you have people waiting at home doing nothing, so that's great. But there's absolutely nothing going on, so it sucks.
It's kind of just more of the same.
And I want to say this too, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, but this is what I've been doing since 2006. Don't expect us to cover WWE much. It's not a relevant topic. People don't care about it. WWE is at a terrible spot right now. I don't have any desire to promote a wrestling show like a WrestleMania at a warehouse. I think it's ridiculous. I think you should absolutely have postponed WrestleMania. I think WWE is a very stale, boring brand ran by a man that is completely out of touch at this point and is holding a lot of people back. And it just feels like AEW is taking a ton of momentum and the WWE is just falling apart. And we are watching literally history happen. And I hate that this coronavirus thing happened because it killed a lot of momentum for things that was going on. But I just hope everything gets back to normal and things get fired up. And honestly, man, we'll be talking about fights soon because Dana is Dana and he is not going to be stopped for nothing. And we're going to have fights. And I'm not that bothered by it, honestly. I just think like fighters know the risk and they're willing to do it because they want to get paid. And Dana wants to put out content out there and people want to see the fights. They're stuck at home. They're bored. I understand that they're probably not going to be tested for the coronavirus and they could spread it and all that other stuff. But if that's what they choose to do, then it is what it is. And, they're entertaining millions of people at home. So it is what it is.
Well, so we're just kind of waiting on fights. But it's like if you talk to Dana, he's a scientist these days or a doctor. So we'll see.
What I do is if you have stopped working, you are a weak person. You are a weak person, and if you want to, because he'll just be like, "Oh, my team, we're pushing through, and we're toughing this thing out," and like it's a badge of honor for him. And I get it. If I was just some casual fan and I'm watching, I'm just so offended by Dana. And let's listen. I've listened to Dana for a very long time. This is Dana White. This is just who he is. He has no sympathy for the weak-minded in his eyes. He has no sympathy for people that are wanting to take the easy way out. He will crush you like a bug if he finds weakness in you. And if you try to get in the way of his business, he is coming after you. So just let him be. Let him be. Let him do his thing, and they will.
Well, I know the big news on that front is finding out with Tony and Khabib where that's really going to take place. He's not budging that it's going to be April 18th and no other date other than that. So,
like he's gonna try to stack that card, right? Like it's gonna have freaking Ngannou and Ocean Strike or whatever. It's gonna have Woodley and Leon Edwards, and like he'll just put everybody on that damn thing. He does not care. And what I hate though is like, man, like one of the biggest fights. This is like the Smart Mark fight, one of the biggest fights in UFC history. It's going to be in an empty arena. Like it sucks, but at the same point, it's like this thing's been scheduled 5 times. If you can just get it done, then just get it done. It is what it is. Yeah. But what I don't like is I feel like no matter what, they're going to want to run these back due to controversy. I didn't get enough proper notification. My weight cut was bad. Blah 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 blah. I didn't even know where I was fighting a week ago. Like everything. And if they go to Russia in an empty arena, is Tony going to really get a fair shake if that thing goes to a decision? Like, come on. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not the best, but nothing's the best right now. Yeah. This is what it is.
No, we'll see. Guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You can follow myself.
Hit the bell.
Yeah,
hit the notification.
Hit that bell. You can follow me. I actually run the All Elite feed, Twitter at All Elite feed. Check out Doug on Twitter at All Elite Doug 21. That's it for this week, and we'll catch you guys later.
Take care.